When everything we consume is the worst thing ever by some mouth breather on the internet, how is anything truly the worst thing ever? Time for the only podcast to officially create a list of the worst movies ever made. The only one. For real. Worst movies ever.
Worst movies ever. Welcome to another episode of Worst Movies Ever, and today we're going to be talking about one of those Mount Rushmore bad movies that all of us that watch trash cinema are aware of. The Beast of Yucca Flats, directed by Coleman Francis in 1961, is always brought up, and it's kind of a ubiquitous film with a lot of public domain sets. Almost any place that you can stream that's free will have Beast of Yucca Flats on it. And I know this is a very antiquated idea at this point, the Walmart $5 bins or the 50 to 100 movie pack DVD sets, because those are just not a thing anymore. But for a long time, when you could buy physical media, and you still can do it, but nobody really does it very much anymore, there would be a lot of companies out there like Good Times or Echo Bridge or things like this that they would pick up and repackage old public domain films and put them out there. You could rest assured Beast of Yucca Flats was always a part of any of those sets. I think I have this film no less than in 3 fucking packs. And it's really hard to talk yourself into watching a lot of those movies because the transfers were always so fucking awful. And the movies were just so dreadfully dull that, there's a reason they're packed into 100 movies, 50 to 100 movies. Nobody watches these things. There's stuff that a lot of horror hosts would put on it late at night and then goof over. Or Mystery Science Theater 3000 would talk over, because without that commentary, you would fall asleep within 10 minutes. And today, the movie we're going to be talking about is absolutely one of those movies. Coleman Francis, who has kind of been pointed at as being a spiritual successor or a parallel version of Ed Wood. And I can kind of see it. Only directed 3 films. And as far as I can see, because I've never seen either of the other films that he made, none of them are considered good. If they're anything like the Beast of Yucca Flats, I am going to run clear of those fucking things. This movie, I think some of the reason why it's tied to Ed Wood a little bit, people point at Ed Wood, is because this movie stars Tor Johnson, who infamously, he was a professional wrestler turned actor thanks to Ed Wood in movies like Night of the Ghouls and Plan 9 from Outer Space. And in those movies, he could barely talk. In the Ed Wood movies, very sparingly ever said anything, and was mostly just this mammoth presence, just a huge gargantuan man. For my 80s wrestler fans, think of George the Animal Steele, but twice his size. If you can imagine that. Tor Johnson, he's something, and I could see why people would have wanted him in their movies back in the day, because he's just a spectacle. A lot of wrestling fans know that they always like to have giants because it's just something you don't see very often. And these directors back in the day where they had very little money and they needed special effects were going to look for people that looked out of the norm. And Tor Johnson definitely fills that void. So let's get to what the Beast of Yucca Flats is, folks. The plot of this thing. Tor Johnson, told to us excessively in nonstop voiceover, is a scientist fleeing a politically motivated assassination attempt who unluckily stumbles into an atom bomb testing site, which is the Yucca Flats, and turns into a radiated killing machine. Two boys wander off into the desert, and an inept search party looks for them as Tor Johnson shakes a stick at them violently. I usually, when I see movies like this, and they're only 55 minutes long, and this one I think is like 54, 55 minutes long, I'm just like, fuck yeah, I can do this. No problem. And in the movie, this movie starts off in particular with a scene in which a lady who's topless, which I was rather shocked by for a film of 1961, gets lazily strangled by Tor Johnson. I was just like, this movie's fucking in the bag. What a piece of cake. But I gotta tell you my verdict. What starts off charmingly stupid becomes so completely inept that you start to feel like you've been sucked into a vortex of time where 54 minutes has actually become 2 hours. This is literally one of the strangest films I've ever seen, as it does everything in its power to prevent you from seeing people talk on screen using their mouths. In doing so, it slowly becomes apparent that this film was cobbled together in post-production, and by the end of its runtime, has completely bamboozled you and stripped you of precious time in your life. Easily one of the worst movies I've ever seen and of all time, but even having said that, is still oddly charming thanks to its awkwardness. A complete public domain staple, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, even though I said it's easily one of the worst films of all time, I can't put it on the list. There were too many things that I actually kind of giggled at in this movie, so it's got some worth. Let's get to the goods.
What is good?
As I said before, this movie opens up with a completely disconnected scene that literally has nothing to do with the rest of the movie, and in context is so like removed from when it would actually happen. We have no idea when this actually happens, but it makes no sense and obviously was tacked on to the beginning of this film to create some sort of intrigue and like hook you in some way. And it's this scene where this lady gets out of the shower and is like making herself up in the mirror and takes off her towel and starts getting dressed completely topless, and Tor Johnson's huge hands lazily strangle her, and she just kind of gives up and dies. Cut to title. The fact that nothing of this nature is replicated throughout the rest of the film was so soul-crushing. There's one scene a little bit later where this couple are stranded on the side of the road, and he chokes out the husband who's trying to fix the car, and then somehow gets around the car. And I'm telling you, Tor Johnson is this humongous mammoth of a man. But somehow this lady who awkwardly smokes a cigarette in her car doesn't see this gargantuan walk around the car and come behind her to strangle her. Two scenes, literally the only things that happen in this movie. And really the only other goods I can give this movie is just like most of the people, due to how this film was made, just kind of awkwardly move around in its space. And it provides a lot of like unintentional comedy. But for the most part, this opening sequence is the only thing that's even worth watching in this piece of shit. Maybe I should change my mind. Let's get to the bads.
What is bad?
This film literally has no sync sound. It informs literally everything in every other decision that was made in the construction of this film. It's entirely told in a voiceover that is written in such a piecemeal fashion, and also in the fashion of it, like the tone of the voiceover is like those old 50s and 60s pulp novels where it's ultra serious. Like for modern fans, you remember the Frank Miller comic book and the films that were made of Sin City, where they have this really like overdone, overdramatic kind of voiceover that's telling the mental state of the character that's on screen and the story that's being told. Think of that kind of voiceover and just make it like 20 times stupider. And that's exactly what you hear the entire movie. Every person that comes out, this is Jane, a scientist, walking through the desert. Has time been taken away from them? Are they able to get into their car? I mean, I'm kind of just making this up as I'm going, but that's exactly what this movie is. As the movie goes along, because of this decision to tell it entirely through voiceover and never have anyone, and I mean this, anyone actually speak on screen. There's people on screen, but the most of the time that happens, they're so far away, it's clear that they just recorded lines of dialogue that got slapped over top because nobody could tell that they were actually talking or not. So as the movie goes along, it really feels like they just shot a bunch of footage, threw it together in post, and then decided to write a script based on that. Oh, we got Tor Johnson for an afternoon. He's supposed to be a monster. Film him roaring around, shaking around, walking intimidatingly this way and that way. Give him a huge stick. Have him walk because he probably had bad hips, probably had a tough time even walking and moving around because it looks that way. So they had to give him a huge walking stick to walk through the desert. Speaking of walking around awkwardly, everyone in this movie does it. Nobody in this film, due to the fact that nobody actually gets to interact with each other in a way people would, it's almost like a fucking silent movie where people are like pointing at things or they walk up to a screen. There's one shot that I was just flabbergasted by. And these two people walk up to a car and it's a shot from the perspective inside the car. And you're looking out and these people walk up to the side of the car and all we see are their necks and shoulders and arms, and they don't start talking until they reach their final point. So we're watching a shot in a scene between two people who are talking that we never see their heads. What the fuck is that? I should just have all of this as what the fuck, because that's exactly what it is. But it's like everything about this movie is so awkward. So as you would imagine, having said that, seeing how you're not going to see any people actually talk on screen, and I mean, you'd be fooled because there'd be scenes where people would shout and put their hands around their mouths like, hey! You don't see their mouths, so they could say literally anything they want there. Of course, because of this, there's a lot of driving cars and B shots of people in cars with the cars being shook because they're not driving. A lot of shots of people walking around. A lot of shots of kids walking in the desert doing nothing. Just total non sequitur crap. The entire movie. Lots of shots of backs of heads because you don't have to, sync up any sound if they're talking and we just see the backs of their heads. So a lot of shots of like there's a whole shootout sequence at the beginning of this, the whole setup of how Tor Johnson becomes the Beast of Yucca Flats. And there's this chase sequence between a bunch of cops and FBI agents or whoever the fuck they are. And Tor Johnson runs like lazily away from the scene into the desert and the atom bomb, the footage of the atom bomb goes off. They're shooting at each other. And of course, there's no muzzle blasts. It's just a bunch of sound effects of guns and people awkwardly falling over. Everything is awkward about this movie. And you can find, if you're willing to, some charm in that stuff. If you're like stuck on a desert island, you have a VCR and a TV and a copy of the Beast of Yucca Flats. And it's literally the only fucking thing you get to watch for the rest of your miserable ass life as you're waiting for some sort of rescue team to come and get you. And you hope that you don't die and starve of dehydration. You can find some enjoyment in the awkwardness of this entire situation. But for the most part, man, this movie sucks. Like, there's a scene where this guy is trying to look for his kids, and the cops are aware they're looking for the kids. So the dad is running around the desert attempting to find the kids. And I think he stumbles into like a no admittance zone where he's not supposed to be, no trespassing. And this guy who's a cop, one of the cops that are helping, is shooting from a fucking helicopter at this guy. And the wide shots of the guy running are one dude, and there are close-up shots of, like, and they're really close, of a guy kind of hopping in frame in a completely different shirt. So this guy is completely in frame, just kind of hopping to approximate like he's running. It's so shitty. But it's fucking hilarious. So that's kind of charming, but it's so fucking terrible. It's so fucking bad. And as I had said before, Tor Johnson as the monster is really just a dude in a ripped shirt with a walking stick looking like a weirdo the whole fucking movie. He's so bad in this movie. And he's so bad, let's be honest, he's bad in every fucking movie he's ever been in. But he's so bad in this movie that by the end, spoilers.
This is a warning. Thank you.
When Tor Johnson gets killed, and he's supposed to be dead, he can't sit still. There are close-up shots of him supposedly dead. His mouth's moving, he's breathing up and down. A rabbit inexplicably comes up to him, and he pets the rabbit, and then still doesn't stay still. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? He's so terrible. And the last bad I have is that the mom character of the two boys that everyone's attempting to find as they ran off into, the desert, and they're worried that Tor Johnson is going to get them. The mom character literally does nothing but stand and look around stupidly the entire movie. They keep cutting back to her, and she just keeps looking from the left and to the right. And then she turns around and it's the back of her, looking to the left and looking to the right. Then they show her again. She stands still, walks about 5 feet, stands still, looks to the left, looks to the right. This is her entire fucking character. Let's get to the what the fucks, because that's all that there is in this movie.
What the fuck is that?
So at the beginning of this movie, we find out Tor Johnson has choked this couple on the side of the road, and they're left there. There's bodies, and the cops are notified about this. The cop drives out to check on the crime scene, sees that the people are dead, and then just drives off and leaves them there. What the fuck? Also, Tor Johnson has picked up the lady that he strangled of this couple and taken her to a cave in which he's living in the middle of the fucking desert. How the fuck did the cops find that cave? Just like, it's so random and it's such an expansive area that the cops just like, there's whole sequences of them just wandering around in the desert and climbing rocks. They just like hone in on this one cave of many, I'm sure. And they find her. How the fuck did they do that? Also, another sequence, another what the fuck. These kids, because the movie is set up where this family stops to get some gas, and the kids get 2 sodas. And the kids wander off while they're waiting for their gas to get, pumped and all this stuff. They go and feed pigs that are down the walkway from the gas station. They feed them soda. Who feeds soda to pigs? And why would that even be a thing? In the last what the fuck I'm going to do, and then we'll just move the fuck on from Beast to Yucca Flats. Remember that sequence I was telling you about before where the cop is shooting at the dad from a helicopter? He shoots at the guy, and the guy just ultimately, I am not sure if he actually gets hit or if he just lays on the ground. The one cop with the rifle that was shooting at him just jumps out of the fucking plane for reasons. It's so horribly edited that it's absolutely fucking hilarious. But you're like, what the fuck is going on right now? And that's really all I got for Beast of Yucca Flats. It is 54 minutes of time where you're just like, as the movie goes along, the what the fuck and stupid factor of it just compounds into pure lunacy. It is absolutely a waste of everyone's time. But even having said that, I think if you were to watch it with someone else, you could find a lot of things to laugh at with it. That first sequences that I told you before is fairly entertaining, even though it's like 3-4 minutes long. Tor Johnson, even though he's like one of the worst actors of all time, there's some charm in seeing how awkwardly they have him act on screen and that he doesn't accomplish anything that they're really asking of him. And it's also kind of like a feat in wonderment to see how they even constructed a film that obviously had no fucking script. Like this movie, none of the story makes any sense. The voiceover put together is literally just like disconnected character bios and a guy just like awkwardly describing what's on screen. So in one way, easily one of the worst things ever, crafted and then put out there into the world for people to actually spend money on, but also a marvel of fucking nature that something like this even exists and that somebody would even take the time to make something like this, knowing that they just do not have the resources to make it happen. I don't know, man. I'm very conflicted as to whether or not like this is absolute fucking waste of time piece of shit, or if this is something that needs to be studied in fucking film classes. Because the movie looks good. The audio, even though it totally doesn't work, it sounds good. And it's awkward. Like I can't put this on the list, even though it is a terribly shitty movie. It's just so unbelievably gobsmackingly weird that I gotta just say, you know what? This is one of the movies that's riding the line that's not going to work for, I would say, 85% of people. But the other 15% of people might find enjoyment out of the Beast of Yucca Flats. I don't know, man. That's all I got. So next episode of this, I am bringing on my partner Ken's again, and we're going to be talking about another Nick Millard movie. Can you believe it? I have a feeling by the end of our time here on this podcast, we'll cover almost everything Nick Millard has done. So we're going to be talking about Cemetery Sisters next episode. So hit them notification buttons, slap that like button. Just kidding. I don't give a fuck about any of that. I'll catch you next time.
Worst Movies Ever podcast is executive produced by Vaughn Koolmeyer and Shannon Smith. For more Worst Movies Ever, and to make the Doctor watch your worst movies ever, subscribe to the Worst Movies Ever Patreon at patreon.com/Worst Movies Ever. There you will get a monthly exclusive WME podcast plucked from the user-generated film list. randomized episode to episode. Until next time, celebrate trash at all costs. Toodles.